Hello, this is Pixie doing another video. So, yeah, I've been offline from videos because I've had some problems with my phone, but I've got that resolved. I just ended up getting a new phone, really. Probably need to make some improvements on the holder for it, and sometimes it rattles and so on, but I can do a bit of a improvement on that, I'm sure. A bit of sound reduction in the background, but also it's not live, but it's a real recording. I'm not sat in some studio. I don't have a script. I don't have any sort of, so I haven't been spending hours trying to make this recording. It's actually quite live. It's quite fresh in that sense. Just sort of what comes out in my sort of focus. So the other thing I was thinking about, so we're getting to OMAD. Maybe I'll talk about some other things. I don't know. So which is the best way? This way. So with regards to OMAD, so I've been doing some OMAD or doing fasting. Let's generalise it and talk about fasting, because to be honest, I haven't always done OMAD recently. I lost a lot of weight with OMAD. It's very effective. So before I was doing a mixture of intermittent fasting, and I reduced my sort of window down, and then slowly I pushed it into the OMAD, and I was quite happy with OMAD. I started off with a larger meal, and then I kind of felt like I didn't need to eat so much, and it just got reduced, and that was fine. And I was being quite strict for a bit, because I thought I want to see weight loss. And so what I did is I started drinking things like black tea rather than having milk in it and black coffee. Now the problem is with caffeine. Caffeine's great, but it's very addictive stuff. So that's my next challenge. I've already got to kick caffeine out of my life. And I'll probably talk about caffeine as well. But lots of people say, yeah, it's great for this, it's great for fasting. Yes, but it's also bad for your heart. It's bad for your vascular health as well. It can cause problems with your veins, because what happens is that your body has a sort of kind of vascular stress, we might as well say, with the cortisol and an adrenaline dump into your body, which may be over a longer period of time than you would if you had, say, you were dealing with a threat situation. You may end up raised high maybe for 3 hours, but with caffeine you might be pushing it to 6, maybe 8, it might even go beyond that. And then it causes other things like disturbed sleep, your heart rate's a lot higher, you might have palpitations. There's some other issues you can have with caffeine that are quite bad, so it's a case of just understanding the nature of caffeine. I would say that drinks that contain 0 calories, now 0 calories in diet often are the same. I was looking at one of these drink cans, and basically on it the actual had a slight amount of calories, and it claimed it was 0, and I thought, okay, it's got sweeteners, so the sweeteners must be derivatives from sugar, so it's aspartame, K-aspartame and something else. They're all the ones I've heard are basically not very good for you. And like I've said before, I've said on my other videos that my grandmother was a biochemist for a period of her life, and she was testing sweeteners, and there was carcinogenic properties about some of the sweeteners. Whether they got improved, which particular type of sweetener, I don't know. It's just that because they're less natural to the body, that they had some issues. However, I don't think that's the issue. What happens with possibly sweeteners and other chemicals, let's say sweeteners and sugars, is that they could, if they cause insulin spikes, then what they cause is the basically defences come offline. It's just like a reboot. So we need to restock, re-energise. And so the body's open, it's open for attacks and all sorts. But the problem is with the body's immune system, it knows that it's too effective, and it will attack itself. So when you're eating food, it's got to have a system in place whereby it needs to regulate your immune response to your incoming food. Especially if you've got issues like leaky guts and other things that you might have associated with sort of obesity, overeating, certain things in your diet maybe not so natural, and cause allergies and reactions and inflammation. It could be that you've got an autoimmune thing that runs in the family. It could be all sorts of things. It could be the fact that you never got breastfed when you was a child, or or you did possibly, but usually breast milk would have immunosupport rather than an immuno problem. It could be other things you're exposed to as a sort of young age, or it could be a later age. You had certain vaccines may have triggered things. I mean, I'm not hitting down on vaccines being evil or whatever. It's just that it's experimental, isn't it? You're injecting something into your body, and your body's going to have a response to it. And so it's that unsureness or not knowing is kind of the issue. However, it's not the end of the world. You can improve your immune system. There's a lot of things, research into some of these medicinal mushrooms, because they grow on trees. They've got polysaccharides. They've got other things. There's something, beta-cannons or something like that. I can't. I'm just trying to reflect on what's in my memory. But there's a good few things in there that the sugars they get from the trees you couldn't normally process, but they've extracted it, things like from chaga and from the mushrooms, and you've got it in a bioavailable source, a viable, because if it's not viable to you, you just can't process it like fibre, and you just will pass it out your body. This is why the assumption that eating lots of vegetables, eating any type of vegetable is going to be great. Not if your body can't process it. You must have seen it with a child. With small children eating carrots and sweet corn, they will pass it straight out their stomach, so they're not really getting much nutrient benefit from it. But at a later date, their body becomes a bit more persistent at processing food and becomes better to manage it. It could be that it's just the body says, well, hey, this is not so natural, it's not what we're looking for, let's just pass it straight out. So really it's a case of understanding your own biology. People can tell you about what they eat and what's good for you and stuff like that. Most of the people, the strongest critics are the people that don't actually practice what they're preaching. So that's always be careful for people like that. They will say, oh, little and often, do this, do that. You look at them and you think, well, you're not actually that healthy, so why should I accept any advice from you? And it may be that they've got some academic understanding of nutrition at some level, or they've read a lot of different things, but they might be conflicting. Unless they're putting into practice what they know isn't really so valuable. It's like you're asking the history of dieting, and they might come up with these different diets. So say, so do you have you done these? So, oh no, I don't need to. Or some. That's probably the worst case scenario. Is that some people may naturally have a certain they might be in their kind of weight zone they want to be, ratio, or they go to the gym, they do things. Well, it might be that they're a certain age, they're not affected the same way by the hormone issues, and so they do what everyone else does. They fit in, and they're fairly slim, they're fairly healthy on the outside anyway. So they don't need to practice what they're preaching about. They say, oh, well, I've done this, I've done that. Or maybe they are a bit more sensitive and aware. There could be some autoimmune issues that they're sort of looking at. But however, they may have they're on the journey. Then they haven't got to the mountain or the summit yet. They're still travelling on that journey. So all they can do is speak from their own experiences about themselves. That's probably about it, and that's useful. However, they can't reject other people's beliefs or personal choices simply because they're not experienced enough to do that. So just be mindful of people's advice. Also, if you do practice fasting, or you're trying to get into it, or you're doing something about it, is that people will not understand unless they've done it. They will only understand when they see results, and then you can say, well, I've done some intermittent fasting whereby I adjust when I eat and kind of modulate the calories according to that. Because basically, in order to lose weight, yes, you need to eat a different amount of calories. It could be the type of calories and all sorts of other things. But what fasting will give you is the ability to reset some of your body's immune issues and responses to food, and allow your body to become more sensitive and more in tune. It's like a tune-up, basically. It's your MOT for your body. So let's wait till it goes at some point, probably blast him up, but yeah, that's it. So and then after, what do you do? You've adjusted your biology, well then you experiment. You need to find out what works well. Now you've got this machine, you need to fine tune it. So you might have foods you like, favourite food. You don't have to take them out of your diet. You may modify your diet. So you may look at sort of, you know, you can have sugars but don't have it all the time, or you have a different pattern on a certain day, or you try to simplify your food. So you might eat more of one type of food, and then maybe some little sauces or little something to flavour it up a bit. However, you're mainly eating one type. You know, you could be days where you have more vegetable-based food, or days when you have more meat-based food, or processed. You might sort of play around with that. Processed doesn't tend to be so great because it's usually already been cooked once, and may have been treated with sort of preservatives and other chemicals in there. So usually cooking from fresh, but if you're eating a different window, you can play around with actually doing the food yourself, which is a lot better. You know, get into food, get into understanding what it's about. So, I mean, yeah, OMAD's helped me a lot, but my body has started to change a little bit. It's not a case of I've lost willpower and things like that. I mean, I could test that as a theory. I mean, there has been changes, so more the morning, sort of mid-morning onwards until maybe past midday, depends on how I've been working that day. So the food kind of does wrap around my work hours, but it also works around the opportunities and the activity. So I might have a window where I'm not eating sort of one big meal in 1 hour, and that's that. I have done things like that. What I've been doing is I've started to open up the window a bit more, and so it might be 3 or 4 hours, so it's gone a bit warrior. But I've been quite mindful of scale feedback, and I've also been doing other things like I've added to it, to the mix, is I'm doing things like cold water therapy. I'm going to do some other things, but I'm also looking at scale feedback. So if it does start to skyrocket and the approach isn't quite right, I'm just going to adjust that. But I'm more mindful of the food, so I'm trying to eat more like raw foods in salads, and then maybe some kind of meat to go with it and things like that. There's a lot of stuff you'll hear that's wrong out there as well, which I criticise. Things like, you know, it's more natural, a vegan-based diet, and that people are healthier that eat vegan diets, depending on their biology, depending on what they have eaten prior to that, or what they've got stored in excess in their body. I mean, I know a chap, okay, he's elderly, but his body is quite vulnerable. He's ended up having blood transfusions, so even though he's a vegetarian, he's still having a cannibal rich kind of thing. He's having someone's blood put into him to make up for deficiencies in his body. And I mean, in fairness, it's his life choice, because he's always never been into certain foods. But however, at the moment, he needs to be into everything. I think his missus said he used to have fish in his diet. I'd probably suggest he gets the fish back in there, and the bones. He may not like it, but then again, if he won't eat it, it's going to be pretty much his choice. And he needs to have blood transfusions, and they don't always agree with him. You're putting in a foreign blood, it's just the same as a vaccine. There's a kind of spiritual stuff that's missed. You know, if I'm receiving blood, I've got to have a spiritual connection with it. It's going to be interfused with my body. You can't stick a soul into a soul essence into a person without it having a reaction at some level. You know, I can't go around stealing energy off people. There's usually some kind of payback for that. That's why if I sense a kind of essence of an animal, that I kind of pass it on spiritually into heaven, which kind of sounds unusual, but I visualise the animal, and consciously I kind of, sort of, let me accept your energy as a part of myself, and also that to move on into this I've got a realm. And I mean, I've seen this kind of realm where there's like animals herding, there's like cows herding them and stuff. So it's their version of heaven, really. Because there's different planes of consciousness, so they must exist there. So it's kind of relinquishing their body. I think most of them, they understand there's a nature, there's natural cycle to death and life. They don't fully understand it at one level, but they accept it. I think they accept it because they're out of pain, they're physically okay, in one way, spiritually, their spiritual body, and they're just going off and eating. Here we go, got someone coming down in the middle of the bloody road. They're coming off, thank you very much. That's good. So yeah, a bit more experimenting, and also sugars. I try to make some sort of concoction between sugar and colloidal silver. So we've got the polysaccharides, and then I'm going to infuse them. That's what I'm doing, infusion. I don't know, because I haven't got the equipment to check out what the sugar molecule looks like and the silver, and if I can bind them together, or if I even create a new type of molecule that's kind of colloidal, possibly, because sugar goes into a colloidal state as well, because it's crystal, because you have it as a crystallized form. And so there's a point with water acts as a conduit to kind of combine both. So I try that, but I need to be quite careful with my experiments. I guess not really particularly. It's just that any insulin present acts as this conduit into the cells. So I'll be putting colloidal silver inside the cell. It's a bit like the chap who's Algeria. He had this blue skin disorder. He allegedly mixed up salt, made silver salts, and he rubbed it into his skin, so his skin absorbed it into the cells, and then created the condition. Anyway, it's Pixie sign off. That's what you're saying.